Hey, it's Luke from Signal Sounds, and today we're going to take a look at some of the new features in the big 2.0 firmware update for the Torso S-4. Now, I had initially filmed this video while the firmware was in a beta stage, so I'm just going to make a couple of disclaimers that the graphics may change between what you're seeing on my video and what is actually in the final release, as well as I'm going to mention that it's a beta firmware quite a lot in this video, but just know that it is publicly available now. There's quite a lot of cool features on this, so let's get stuck in. So the first thing that I want to take a look at today is the new envelope follower modulation source that's been added. Now, I already thought that the S4 was pretty powerful on modulation. You basically had 4 different sources that could go to pretty much any destination. It had really powerful shaping for the waves and random and all that kind of stuff. So I already thought it was pretty good from this perspective, but the envelope follower is really cool. So how it works is you essentially have an incoming audio signal, and then the modulation is tracking the shape of that and then can be used to send to a destination. So this is what we're going to start with, is just this stock sample. And then we're going to add in some envelope follower. Now, to get to the envelope follower, I just select a mod channel, and then we just want to go to follow here. And now you can see that we have a following of our audio signal, which we can then map. So an example of what we could send that to could be something like the delay level. So all I need to do is just select the mod destination, and I'm just going to add that in a positive value. I'll maybe do it to like 80%. And now what will happen is, as the sort of peaks of the signal go up, the delay level, the delay send, will go up as well. So it sounds like this. So you can kind of hear that what's happening there is when the sample cuts out, the delay level comes right back down. But when you kind of hear those sort of louder peaks, it kind of pokes up and pokes through, which is actually really nice. If I turn the feedback up, maybe it'll kind of be a little bit more obvious. So it's really nice to kind of have some of these effects sort of react dynamically. So I've mapped a few more parameters to that envelope follower, things like the pitch setting in Mosaic, and then kind of also some of the filter settings, as well as more of the delay and reverb settings. So our dry sound without any of the mappings sounds like this. And our affected sound with the envelope follower mod sounds like this. Which I think sounds really cool. You could, again, the thing with the S4 is it feels like it can do subtle changes as well as drastic changes to a sample. Things you can change within the envelope follower that are really useful. You have an input gain setting, which to the left essentially reduces the modulation to the point where you can't actually hear it. Or if you move it to the right, you're essentially pushing the signal up, which means you're getting more modulation. And that can get pretty wild. You also have a delay, which begins to offset the envelope follower signal from the original incoming audio. Which you can hear is kind of giving a bit of a weird slapback sound, which is really nice. There's also an amount, which again sort of acts as essentially just a dry wet control there. You have a rise and a fall for controlling the attack time, a spread that creates differences between the left and right, a filter for the incoming audio signal, and then hold essentially adds a sample and hold circuit to essentially the envelope followed signal, so it kind of creates these random little jitters within that signal if you'd like that as well. Now, another thing that's really useful is if you hold this down, you can choose which track the envelope follower is taking its signal from. So that is really useful. It can be either the audio input, the audio from track 1, 2, 3, or 4, or the entire mix. So you could have, say, for example, drums on one sound and then another sound on a different track. And that other sound on the other track could be getting dynamically changed by the drum sound as a mod source, basically, which is really, really cool. And so here's an example of that. So I've got on track 1, I've got drums. On track 3, I've got the drums pinging for some melodic content. And then on track 2, we've got bypass, which means I'm going to be playing my guitar into this. And then I've got dynamic changes from the envelope follower going to things like the granular settings, increasing the wet dry there, and also the delay and reverb. So this is what it sounds like. So another big feature in this beta firmware is the new Perform menu. Now, what Perform does is it essentially allows you to map multiple parameters to a single knob or a single button. Now, what's really useful for me about this is it's kind of nice to just be able to control multiple things without leaving a single menu. Because the way that the S-4 is laid out, you essentially have like different aspects in different sections. So I've got my drive and compression in this menu. I've got my delay and my reverb in this menu. I can essentially map delay, drive controls to a single macro knob, and then I can control both of those without having to leave this one menu, which I think is really cool. So to map a macro, it's actually quite a simple setup. All you do is you've got your Perform menu. When I go out back into the regular menu, if I just hit Perform and hold that down, it will say that it's mapping macro 1. Which is good, and I'll turn up the delay, and I could turn down the delay. So as I turn the macro 1 up, it goes down, or I can turn it up when it goes up, and I can also do the reverb time. So this will just kind of give us instant delay and reverb over macro 1. So if I hit play, you can hear that I have a control over that level. So I've just spent some time mapping some macros. So macro 8 is controlling the filter decay. Now, essentially the S4 works as lots of individual bands of filters, and you can ping those, which sort of gives you like a plucky bell-like sound. And yeah, I'll kind of show you what that means. So I'll drum loop, and as I turn up macro 8, you can kind of hear that it's pinging and creating this lovely little melody out of that, which is nice. So I can turn that back down. On macro 2, I've got a little bit of reverb and distortion and a touch of delay as well. And macro 3 is largely doing delay feedback. And macro 4 is probably the weirdest one. So with the S4, you have speed and tempo controls. So if I play this, I can slow the speed of the playhead down. Or you can change the tempo, and again, you kind of have this speeding up and glitchy sort of sound. So what I've done is I've mapped a macro to both of those controls, and when I grab it, you can hear there's quite a weird, glitchy sorts of sounds that we're getting from that. Now, what's really nice about having all of these macros is that you can actually also send mod to them, which is really cool. So I've got random on mod 1, and then an envelope follower on mod 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add envelope follower to our macro 8, so that we're getting these dynamic changes where the bell's coming in. So that sounds like this. Which is really nice. Again, you kind of have that dynamic thing from the envelope follower. I'm going to also add a little bit of macro 2 to our delay and reverb, as well as maybe some random mod as well. Oh yeah, that's quite cool. And on mod 3, I've got this slow sine wave, which I'm going to map to macro 4, which should start to make things a little bit chaotic. I'm going to also map some mod 1 in the reverse. And I can still change these macros even though I've kind of got this envelope follower going on. You can kind of hear that we've got these bells coming through in this like really glitchy way because of the way that the playhead is moving. So for a reminder, this is our dry sound. And our wet sound. Now, another feature that's been added is this temporary button. Now, the temporary button was actually on the Torso T1 as well, which is their sequencer. And how it works is you can hold this button, make temporary changes to parameters, and then when you let go, they return back to where they were before. So let's hear a musical example of how this could be implemented. It's quite useful for transitions or for live performance. So here's an example. So I press temp and hold that down. I'm going to increase the decay on that filter. Increase the delay feedback and level. And the spread. And then let go. And one last feature that they've improved upon is the internal microphone. They've significantly improved the signal to noise ratio, so it sounds a bit cleaner. Here's an example of what it sounds like with a kalimba. So hopefully this has given you a good overview of the new features in the 2.0 firmware. On that note, there's actually a few extra features that I haven't mentioned in the video. That's because I was working with the beta firmware, as I mentioned at the start, and they've actually managed to add in a few extra features into the public 2.0 release. So for more information about that, you can just have a look at the Torso website. You can get a Torso S-4 from signalsounds.com, the link as always below. And until next time, bye.